Hello there, we're here, and today is going to be a good one. We're going to be ranking via tier list the 39 unlockable abilities. These abilities are locked in various ways, and some are good and some are very, very bad. I've loaded all 39 of them into Tier Maker, and we are going to go through them alphabetically. In terms of the ranking system, I have taken into consideration how good the ability is, how niche the uses of the ability are, and how expensive or time consuming it is to get if it's untradeable. The very first item we have is the Aggression Sigil. The Aggression Sigil costs 90 million Shattered Anima, and when activated causes up to 8 monsters within a 5-tile radius to be aggressive. It's incredibly niche, it's expensive in terms of anima and the time, and aggression potions exist, so there really isn't a reason to get the sigil, and you should get the other Shattered Anima sigils first. 99% of the time, you're fine just using a aggression potion. Next up, we have Balance Strike, which is another absolute terrible ability. It's got a very long description, but basically it balances the percentage of your life points with your target. So if they have 100% HP and you have 10% HP, you will be healed up to 55% HP, which is the halfway point between the two, while they will go down to 55% HP or take 12,000 damage, whichever is less. I don't think I've ever used this ability when it wasn't for a meme. The dangers of healing your opponent is not worth it, so just don't use this ability. It also takes 100% adrenaline, so it's just not good. Glady Dive is our first good ability, but it's not good for its combat prowess, but its ability to move around the map and move to specific squares at specific times. It can be used off global cooldown, which means that moving around with melee or a melee switch is very easy. This is a must-have for those trying to get into higher level PvM, and for that we are giving it an A rank for its utility. It's also unlocked with Shattered Worlds, so you could get your Aggression Sigil or you can just get your Bladed Dive. The next ability we have on the list is Blood Tendrils, and right away I'm just going to put in the S tier. It's so good. Even before the spear it was good. It's unlocked by the Dig Site quest, which is a very low level quest. The ability does up to 540% ability damage over its duration, and it's a non-channeled threshold, which means you can go right ahead into using your next ability. And it should be used in all melee ability rotations when you don't have a damage boosting ultimate up, as that doesn't boost the damage to Blood Tendrils. And then they added in the Masterwork Spear, which adds another 2 hits onto Blood Tendrils. So it's an amazing ability and I use it all the time. Now, right away, we're just going to also put Corruption Shot and Corruption Blast into S tier, as they are the most damaging basics for range and mage. They do 300% ability damage over their 5 hits, 100% in the first, 80 in the second, 60 in the third, 40, and then 20. The only downside to these abilities is they can't really be used in group PvM, as if I use Corruption Shot and then the next ability, the person beside me at the boss on the same target uses Corruption Shot, it will erase our Corruption Shot, or it'll erase the rest of my Corruption Shot. So that means I only got the first hit out of it, which was 100% damage, which makes it not a good ability. But these are amazing for Slayer and solo bossing. To unlock this ability, you can buy a Raids Codex for 15,000 Techie, which is about 10 raids. Or a Codex can be bought for the GE, and its current price is about 30 mil. Death Swiftness and Sunshine can also go into S tier. They are similar abilities, so I'm putting them together at the same time. They are used everywhere when ranging or maging. It is the damage over time ultimate for range or mage. This boosts damage while standing in the cloud or sunshine by 50%, and it lasts for about 30 seconds. If you have the Planted Feet perk on, you can make it last for 20% longer, up to 37 seconds. This is a must-have for anyone trying to get into PvM that isn't Slayer and using either ranged or mage. It's unlocked by completing a somewhat hard and long quest in the World Awakes, but that quest is so worth it, and as soon as you have the combat requirements to be able to complete it, I would go ahead and complete it. Demon Slayer is not the best. While its ability of 15% extra damage for 10 seconds sounds really great, the issue comes with the fact there are very few demons to use it on. Specifically, the only demon boss is Zambi God Wars Dungeon. This gives it a low rank of D relative to what its ability is. There are 3 places where I would consider it useful, which are Ripper Demons, Calgarian Demons, and Tormented Demons. But the 60 mil upfront cost made me even balk at buying the Demon Slayer Sigil when I was going for my 2000 Ripper Demon pouches for my Ripper Demons guide. Next up, we have the Scare Tactics ability. There are Shock, Horde, Demoralize, and Rout. They're all grouped together as you unlock them together. These abilities exist as a sake of completionist. Melee originally had the ability Kick and Stomp, which moves the target back a square, but Range and Mage did not. So the Scare Tactics abilities were born. They're very niche uses where you want to move an enemy that can't be moved. The Spinners and Ambassadors come to mind. And you can get your bleeds walked, so your Combust or Fragmentation Shot does 2 times damage. But as a whole, they are too niche to be useful, so they go in slot D. I'm just gonna put all 4 of them there. They replace, like for Mage, they replace Impact and Deep Impact, and basically they do the same damage as Impact as Deep Impact, except for they move the target, and moving the target isn't necessarily always good, so they are nothing when you don't need to move the target. Devotion, which can be unlocked by killing monsters in encampments of God Wars Dungeon 1, is a very good ability. Essentially, it brings back the old prayers where protections prayers were 100% and you take no damage if you are praying correctly. I'm going to slot this ability in A, as while it is very good, there is a ton of situations where you don't need the ability, and the 15% adrenaline cost for it being a threshold can sometimes slow you down. On top of that, you can extend your devotion from 10 seconds to 15 seconds and then further to 20 seconds by killing an enemy. And so when you're at a boss monster, it's nice to use devotion around times where you're killing mobs. For example, at Solak, I use devotion before I'm going to be killing the 2 routes south for me as base tank, so that way I get a 20-second devotion and 20 seconds of not taking any melee damage from Solak. Dragon Slayer, which has the same ability as Demon Slayer except for on dragons, is slightly more useful, and that's why I'm going to slot it into C. As Elite Dungeon 2, Dragonkin Laboratory is an entire dungeon centered around dragons. You can really get a large amount of use out of the perk as it works on all 3 bosses and all of the dragon mobs leading up to them. Personally, I'll be buying this ability for when I go for the Blackstone Dragon Pet at Elite Dungeon 2 or my Bossman series. Its upfront cost of 30 mil is much more bearable, and that's why it's getting slot C over Demon Slayer at slot D. The Golden Touch ability is an easy F. It costs 2,000 Vital Sparks to make, which is essentially 300 mil. Its ability is that for the next minute, all items dropped that are below your looping value are automatically alchemized and turned into coins. With how many drop cleaners we have and the use of Dwarfweed Incense Sticks now, it would take an incredibly long time for anyone to break even on owning this sigil, and I wouldn't suggest anyone to make this until Jagex makes some balance changes around it. Greater Barge is another S tier ability. Put it in here. I want to put it at the front because that's how good it is. It costs 200 mil to buy at the moment, or it's a 1 in 100 drop from the Blackstone Dragon. Its special ability is that if you haven't been attacking anything for a couple of seconds, then you are able to bleed one of your channeled abilities. This is incredibly powerful, as a Zerk Assault can do 40,000 damage or more, which Greater Barge essentially lets you do in 1 global cooldown. I recently bought Greater Barge and have been using melee more than ever, and I'm mad at how long it took me to get it. This is an ability worth saving for. Greater Dazing Shot and its threshold counterpart Salt the Wound aren't as great. It's unlocked from Shattered World and essentially tries to replicate the damage increase that dual wield range gets with Needle Strike by applying a bleed every time that Greater Dazing Shot is used. However, it falls flat for a couple of reasons. Slayer monsters have too low HP for the stacks to get high enough for the bleed to do adequate damage, and on the bossing side there are too many mechanics that require you to not attack the boss. It really can only be used effectively in large group bosses where stacks get up very quickly, and the only large group boss with multiple rangers is raids. Salt the Wound, the threshold can only therefore be used at raids effectively, making it an easy placement in D tier. However, Mutated Dazing Shot is part of a regular ability rotation, and it does give you more damage, so it's worth unlocking and getting into slot B. Greater Flurry fits nicely into the A tier, as it's a great addition to dual wield melee rotation, but it isn't as game breaking as the S abilities above it. Greater Flurry can be cancelled after 3 ticks, which is 1 global cooldown. This ensures that 2 hits of Flurry go off, which deal up to 150% ability damage each. This makes it a 314% ability in 1 global cooldown, which is basically turns it into a nether flanking, except for it's over 2 hits, and you don't need to switch to it. Its upfront cost of about 50 mil makes it a very nice ability to get, but I wouldn't get it until you have Greater Barge unlocked, as that's when you have enough Zerk time to get off a Flurry. Because if you're not bleeding either your Assault or your Destroy, you're going to run out of time on your Zerk before you get to the Flurry part of your rotation. Greater Fury is also in the A tier, and whether it's better than Flurry depends on your playstyle. For the Revo++ players, Fury is an incredible upgrade, as previously the Fury ability is not worth using unless you manually cancel it after 3 ticks, which requires you to not AFK with Revo++. For the full manual players, they won't see as much gains by unlocking Fury, but the guaranteed crit when Fury crits is so nice to combo with Mutated Barge, which leads to a very high damage. Guthix Blessing and Ice Asylum share a cooldown, so let's talk about them together. Both are unlocked from quest. Guthix Blessing is the World Wakes quest, and Ice Asylum is the Dig Site quest. They take 100% adrenaline, and they heal you for what amounts to about 40% of your maximum HP. This sounds nice on the surface, but there are some problems. First of all, for those people who have unlocked Soul Split, they are likely to get more healing out of using their adrenaline on offensive abilities and having Soul Split on. 2, if the Elite Seer's village achievements have been completed, an Enhanced Excalibur can be used in your inventory without taking any adrenaline and can provide the same amount of healing with the same cooldown. For that, they get the D tier, some niche use for low-level players, but it's rarely used by people. Slotted in the D tier here, which is getting pretty big because these are all kind of useful, but like not that useful. Ingenuity of the Humans is another Sigil ability. It is an ability that gives the player a 100% hit chance on the next ability they use. This is very powerful, as they are able to use specs weapons such as the Statius Warhammer or the Saren Godbow while not using that style. Its upfront cost of about 100 mil makes it a later purchase, and how niche it is keeps it at a B rank despite its power. It's especially powerful at places like Virago, as for duos you can either hammer to get a 12% damage increase, or you can use Saren Godbow in larger teams to ensure that you get some nice free pushes with the massive Saren Godbow spec. Tendrils' favor slides right into C tier. It's unlocked by Shattered World Anima, 90 million of it to be exact, and its special ability is that when activated for 30 seconds, all monsters in Tendrils' dungeon respawn immediately instead of their regular spawn time. But as a downside, those respawn monsters drop no loot. This is used for power slaying, particularly on Irids and Abyssal Demons, where insane kills per hour are possible. Had this ability cost money instead of Shattered World Anima, it likely would have been dropped to D tier, as it's pretty niche. But at C tier, for those power slayers on what are common tasks of Abyssal Demons and Irids, I decided to bump it up to C tier. Limitless was a tough one to place because it's incredibly powerful, but at the same time it costs 300 mil, and there are much better things you can spend money on. For that, it drops down to A tier. People were using this back when it cost 120,000 GP per charge, and now it's great as you only have the one-time upfront cost of 300 mil. Limitless lets you activate threshold abilities while under 50% adrenaline. This allows you to complete your ability rotation under your damage boosting ultimates without needing an adrenaline potion to get the maximum damage. As the cooldown is 2 minutes and you ultimate every minute, you'll use one ultimate with adrenaline potion, then your next with Limitless, and rinse repeat. Its very high upfront cost makes it tough to justify buying this ability until most max gear is obtained, which drags its ranking down as mentioned earlier. Natural Instinct is a B tier ability. It costs 100% adrenaline but gives you double adrenaline gain for the next 20 seconds. This allows you to build back up to 100% and activate your ultimate ability while still having about 6 to 8 seconds left on your Natural Instinct to build up. This essentially gives you an adrenaline potion boost as you use 3 basics before and get up to about 60% adrenaline. However, this ability is rarely used as very few bosses have enough downtime where you can't attack the boss, and the advent of the Limitless Sigil means you're off APOT ultimate rotation and use Limitless instead of doing Natural Instinct. I will say this ability is good for the release of bosses, as new bosses tend to be tougher on DPS, which might require a Natural Instinct rotation to beat. This ability is unlocked along Sunshine and Death Swiftness during the World Wakes, so all should have it unlocked as you are going after those S tier abilities. To keep the theme going, we have another B tier ability in Onslaught. It's unlocked from raids like Corruption Shot and Corruption Blast. The first 4 hits of Onslaught drain your adrenaline, and then the next hits start damaging you more and more based on the damage you do. As a whole, Onslaught is a very niche ability, as most of the time an ultimate rotation will be better and doesn't come at the expense of all your life points. However, for those just getting into PVM and they necessarily don't have the experience to be able to do a good Sunshine rotation yet, you can use Onslaught as its damage doesn't really reflect your ability. So I know when I was first getting into Solak and my Sunshine ability still sucked, I would Onslaught on the core instead of Sunshining on the core, so that way I did as much damage as I could. And now at a later stage, I only use Onslaught in very niche situations. Its real main benefit is being an ultimate ability, which gives it plus 25 hit chance, and that plus 25 hit chance is really good at high defense bosses like Virago. That makes it a solid B. Reprisal, on the other hand, is way more niche. It's only used when you take big damage but aren't worried about dying, as it reflects all damage you take over the 6 seconds back to your target. This is nice for something like Ice Prison at Nex, as is a guaranteed 6k hit and will damage Nex, speeding up Ice Phase, or for Phase 5 Virago, where there is team splits, you can tank the 8k hit from team split and reflect it back onto Virago, getting you a nice push. But apart from those 2 uses, most of the time Reprisal is used, it's used to stall adrenaline or signal to people that they're going to start the Solak fight. Its niche uses doesn't justify the 100 mil cost unless you are going to camp Virago or Nex, and that's why it ended up in C tier for me. Sacrifice goes in B, and it's a solid B. It's unlocked like Devotion by killing monsters in the God Wars Dungeon 1 encampments. Its special ability is that it heals you for 25% of the damage dealt. But if Sacrifice is what drops the monster down to 0 HP, then it heals 100% of the damage done. This is pretty nice to throw in as an extra ability while all the good basics are on cooldown, as it gives you some minor healing that might help you out later and save on food. It can also be used with all 3 styles, so it has a lot of variety. Shadow Tendrils is another great ability. Its potential to hit 12Ks quite regular makes it a very valuable part of any range rotation, and lowering your HP with the damage you take can help the Derek's Relic give you more damage. This is another must-have ability and well deserving of its S rank. Storm Shards and Shatter is the final raid ability to look at, and well, it's the worst one. How it works is that Storm Shards can be added to the target and its stacks go up by 1 up to a maximum of 10 stacks. At any point, a player can use Shatter to deal a ton of damage at once, up to 30k. There are 10 stacks on it. The problem with this is that it's really only used in group bosses that are long and have opportunity to use shards. Solak, for example, has a ton of time where the boss is sitting at the HP cap and you're not able to do damage, so making it free to add the shard to it, and then you can release that damage later on. Virago, on the other hand, has reflect mechanics, and shards are a great way to stay in combat and also add to the kill. Past those 2 bosses, the ability isn't really used, which is a low C tier. And much like the Natural Instinct, when new bosses come out, especially group bosses, shards are used quite a lot, as they are ways to put DPS into DPS checks from other parts of the fight, which makes it more valuable for new bosses. Slayer Insight is the first ability on the list that talks about experience and not damage or mechanics. It costs 90 mil Shattered Anima to get, which is a couple hours of work, and has the effect that when activated, Slayer experience is increased by 10% for 30 seconds. This is very nice because with the 2-minute cooldown, essentially means that the ability is up 25% of the time, which leads to 2.5% more Slayer XP. If you are going for 120 or 200 mil Slayer, the time spent at Shattered Worlds is worth it, and it can be used on every task, giving it a solid B. Smoke Tendrils is terrible. It's a long channeled ability that does not do a lot of damage for how long it takes. It also damages you, and to put the cherry on top, if your target moves, then the rest of the hits of Tendrils will no longer hit. Put it bluntly, it's a weaker asphyxiate that hurts you and also has a chance to be cancelled. If you currently use Smoke Tendrils in your magic rotation, please stop and replace it with something like a Gothic Staff special, and you'll be much better off. Transfigure is another easy F, but it can be a nice meme ability, so that makes me want to put it at D. It's unlocked alongside Devotion and Sacrifice. I think the only current use for the ability is for hard mode Raga. When dropping down, you can heal the entry hit, but apart from that, it's a dead content ability. What it does is it stuns you in place for 6 seconds, and any damage you take during the ability, you will heal for 2.5 times the damage. So essentially, to get what would be a 3 or 4k heal, you have to stop attacking for 6 seconds, which is not worth it in the slightest. Tuskys Wrath is an incredibly tough one to place. It can really go anywhere from S to D, which is crazy to think about. It goes into S when you're on Slayer. It goes into B when you're doing regular DPS rotations, and it goes all the way down to D when you're doing 4-tick auto attack or dual wield 2-hand swapping. As the main target of this video is not at the super high end of PVM, I decided to ignore this part of it in D, and instead it's going to be put into A. While on Slayer, it essentially hits a 12k every time it's used, essentially gaining a free kill every 2 minutes. However, when off Slayer, it's a B tier ability, as it's a filler ability that does 115% ability damage, kind of like Sacrifice, except for you don't get the heal from Sacrifice. Counteract that, you end up doing slightly more damage. Tuskys Wrath is unlocked by doing the Tuskys minigame. It takes a couple hours to do, but it's well worth it. Undead Slayer is much like the other Slayer Sigil, but it has the most uses. It can be used at Rise of the Six, Barrows, and Elite Dungeon 2. While that isn't enough to drag it out of the C tier, it does make it nice. Its upfront cost of 85 mil is the highest of the 3 Slayer Sigils, and that speaks to how much more it's used. The 15% damage boost just rips through Terracat, and it makes it so much fun to kill that boss. And last, and certainly also the least, we have the Unsullied Sigil. What it does is the corruption mechanic inside the Sophanem dungeon will no longer damage you, but the damage you do is still increased. This is nice for Magister because the damage can sometimes be overwhelming, especially near the end of the fight. However, the 300 mil upfront cost for this is ridiculous for the benefit that you gain, and if you buy this, I hope you do 10,000 plus Magister to get your money back. I'm hoping that Jagex in the future will look into changing both the Golden Touch and the Unsullied Sigil, as they are both dragged down heavily by the cost of the Vital Sparks, and those Vital Sparks are high because people are getting the Limitless Sigil because it's still an A tier ability at 300 mil. So I think they need to make it so that either these two take less Vital Sparks or they take a separate item instead of Vital Sparks, and Vital Sparks are just for Limitless. What did you think of my tier list? What would you change? Interested on hearing your opinions on it. Leave a comment down below on what you would change. This was a lot of fun to do and try out some new things. I definitely learned a lot of things also while making this video. If you enjoyed the video, like the video. If you like the content I'm creating, subscribe, and hope you have a good one.